I want to definitely confirm and agree that, our war, our fight is everybody's fight. We're all fighting these banks. We're all fighting this ruling elite that happens to be crazy, because we can see that they're crazy by the fact that they follow some strange religions and seem to want to put symbolism everywhere in the crimes that they commit. And it's not about being behind Syria and against America. No, it's about stopping the potential of a third world war. And the only people who are going to suffer are us, all of us, people, civilians, soldiers, our families. So, I totally agree. Our fight is your fight, and your fight is our fight. So I want to put out also with Israel, I have no hatred towards any different people. And for me, the perfect solution would be to go back to the way things were, where Jews and Muslims and Christians were living in the old cities and in Syria, and we had no problem whatsoever. And for me, a one-state solution would be ideal, but that's a very, very long story, and I don't want to get into that. But with Assad specifically, and you also mentioned Saddam Hussein, they always tried to create a caricature of like this evil boogeyman, Osama bin Laden, Hitler, and so forth, as the film Kony 2012 did, Kony, another one. But with Assad, it's a little bit, it doesn't quite mesh very well, because even though the government of Syria might be very hard, Bashar Assad himself is actually quite soft. He never actually intended to become president. He was an ophthalmologist.
They don't even deny that he was trying to reform. The bureaucracy has been blocking him, correct?
No, I don't think so. Well, actually, before pre-2008, they had him come to France. They had him, they were preening and trying to buy him away from Iran, basically, in so many words. And a part of that was, I guess, Angelina Jolie coming to Syria, and all these articles coming out like, oh, these dictators are actually very mild, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, there was no way that Syria or even Bashar was going to side with our enemies, these, owned governments in Europe against our ally Iran. So from that point on, they realized, well, that there's only so far that these reforms go. He's not going to introduce a central bank, etc. So I guess from that day on, he was enemy number one.
Well, before we went live here in the interview, you said that you wanted to bring up Angelina Jolie and the points I'd made about her. I mean, what's your view on what she's doing, calling for the invasion of Libya? She's got to feel good about the black genocide there and the 40,000+ dead. She's calling for the invasion of your country and the humanitarian bombing and the al-Qaeda attacks that she says are peaceful and loving. Obama's saying he'll launch wars without congressional approval now that he takes orders from NATO and the UN. What do you think of her in Kony 2012? Just all of it. The repackaging war now as loving and liberal, and you're a traitor if you're not for destroying countries.
Well, they've always said war is peace, haven't they? So with Angelina Jolie, I was in Syria when she was there, and I should have been more suspicious when she was there. I mean, at the time, I actually didn't realize what she was. I thought, she's just some actress. So I was like vaguely interested. Oh, this might be good for tourism, But then I heard at that time that this might have been just a rumor, but that she was thinking about adopting a Syrian child. And actually, I remember feeling such rage at this thought, because it's kind of a humiliation, I think. And I now realize how other countries might feel.
No, it's like war loot. It's like war booty. And as long as they've taken one of your children, then it's okay to carpet bomb you and overrun you with al-Qaeda. So it's all like, look, I have a child I'm loving. It's a totally sick joke with her. In fact, we found she likes to adopt a child from any place she's later going to call for their destruction. So it's like a cute little joke.
Well, luckily, either she wasn't allowed to take one, or or it was a rumor all along. I'm betting it was the former. But she's definitely, as you said, I completely agree with what you said about her. And I feel like she's more than just a useful idiot. And she also appeared in the Corgan 2012 film saying, oh, let's find Coney, like, he's so evil, blah, blah, blah. And I actually have a long commentary on my YouTube channel about Coney 2012. And I don't want to repeat everything, but it's so clearly very, very powerful piece of propaganda, but so clearly, a psychological operation to try to get war to happen in Uganda. So I actually feel that it kind of imploded. It's very strange, there was this huge fanfare, and now it's also all these intellectual people are against it, that are the voices that are being heard. So, maybe it's a plus in the end.
Well, the whole Coney 2012 thing, George Soros connected, State Department connected, all of it. I mean, this guy hadn't been seen in years, 5, 6 years. That's the telltale sign. They just pick a boogeyman where he's there, and then they tried to pass a resolution in Congress saying we'll attack any country we want on the name of Coney in Africa. I mean, it's so transparent, but they got all these trendies hopping around going, it's liberal, it's liberal. I mean, how they've gotten normally liberal anti-war people now to be like vicious pro-war piranhas, all because Obama's in. So you give him the Peace Prize, you have him launch all these wars and call it peace. I mean, it is sick.
It's so ironic because the movie itself is discussing how terrible it is to use child soldiers, where they have images of all of these teenagers in T-shirts with machine guns on their shirts, with a big banner down the bottom that says "We will fight." So it's a complete and utter in-your-face hypocrisy, warmongering. I don't know what else to say about it. I guess the powers that be, they worked hard on that one, but I don't know how far it's taken them. Osama bin Laden was one of those boogeyman that was everywhere. They had a minion as well, Zarqawi, which they used in Iraq, and so many Iraqis were saying, actually, we've never seen him, we've never heard of him, he's just another WMD. But America sure seems to know where he is at all times, and it's crazy how many stories come out of him being killed somewhere or lost a leg. It just shows you that these people, whether they existed in one point or not, the creation, the character that they have of them is just a tool to create war, to gain resources. And in the case of Africa, it's just to push China out of the way so they can get their own oil pipelines through. So that's that about Coney, I guess.
Syrian girl, I want to raise the Al-Qaeda attacks. I already mentioned those, but again, watching the rebels who've been attacking, I don't know, 6, 8 months, however long it's been now, from the beginning shooting and killing people, and then our controlled media that works for the big banks that have taken over America here in my conquered nation, they just all happily go along with the fact that they are implying that military attacks are protesting. And then now we see Al-Qaeda blowing things up. What's your view on that? And where do you see this whole situation going in Syria now that Russian ships are there and Russian troops have been deployed to the area?
Well, on the Russian troops, I think, the ships had been there since the beginning of the year, and they came because actually the ships, French and Canadian ships from Libya, had stayed in the Mediterranean, waiting for a chance to attack Syria. And, I've heard people say that, oh, NATO hasn't attacked Syria because it doesn't have oil. Actually, they've been trying to attack Syria since day one, but they've had Russia blocking them. And, we welcome the ships in the port. The soldiers are not given free rein in Syria. The report initially of the soldiers being there is unconfirmed. I think the first source was Debka. So I'm not sure, but I feel that if there's soldiers anywhere in Syria, they would just be guarding the Russian boats themselves in that locality. But I think that, I trust that our Russian allies would support us if some crazy war hawk just decides to break resolution and attack. Back onto the bombings and the so-called peaceful demonstrations in Syria. Yeah, okay, I think there's been death squads in Syria doing what they've done in South America. If you've ever seen the film with the Venezuelan President Chavez, the revolution will not be televised, you'll see that actually these outside forces were shooting at both protesters and police, tried to instigate something, and the protesters were anti-Chavez protesters. So this is a formula that's been used over and over and over again. And there are death squads in Syria, and there's snipers firing at people buying bread on the street, just randomly at people, mortar fire coming from nowhere, bombings, and yet we're supposed to believe this narrative that only the government is just out killing everybody randomly for no reason whatsoever, and it's really evil, including protesters and that are peaceful and civilians. In reality, the protesters were very, very quickly armed from the start. Very, very within a very short period of time, we saw peaceful protesters and then armed insurgency. So.
Well, that's how the Soviets during the Cold War would do it a lot. They would come in the next country they wanted to invade, and they would exploit the country they'd already taken over to send in rebels. They would call them protesters, have them rise up, and then have them invade and then call for the Soviets to roll in backing them. And the Soviets would say, oh, we're backing a freedom revolution. So this whole proxy war thing is so criminal. And again, you could say what you want of the eye doctor, Assad, and the fact that the government of England then hacked their emails and released them. And I noticed INFOWARS.com was in there. I saw that in the Sydney Morning Herald, that I guess it's Assad's father-in-law was like, here, INFOWARS seems to have it broken down. Look at this. So it shows that the Syrian government's probably not that sophisticated if they're having to figure out what's going on, partially from INFOWARS.com. But I just don't want to see the al-Qaeda flag, even though I'm supposed to love al-Qaeda as an American because Obama says so. I don't want to see al-Qaeda, I know I'm unpatriotic, taking over your country.
Thanks, we appreciate that. But we're not going to allow that to happen. That's what they want in the end. I have videos of these, parts of these insurgent forces, and by and large, they have the same kind of Salafist Wahhabi ideology as Al-Qaeda. So I have videos of them holding up the Al-Qaeda flag on multiple occasions. So it's not really anything to be denied. And actually, half of them, maybe not half, I can't really say percentages and whatnot, I don't have statistics, but a large portion of them are actually from outside of Syria. And even the Western media has reported this.
Oh, yeah, no. In Libya, once they'd killed Gaddafi, they were holding up signs saying, Syria, here we come. Damascus, here we come. I mean, it's clear.
And they met up in Turkey talking about how they were going to come there. And Turkey and Jordan are where these people are trained. And there's actually images of either mercenaries or special forces, Westerners with a British flag on their side and very expensive Kevlar and American weapons. We have images of them training